Hey ladies, this is Mocha Mommy here bringing you another video. And in this video, I really want to address this narrative that's going around YouTube, especially Black YouTube, about how wealthy men are actually devoid of character. There constantly is this talk about this virtue in poverty that Black women are overlooking, and that therefore all of these men who have money, have got it through nefarious purposes, don't value their relationships, are just poor in spirit, but rich in finances, and that's what Black women are choosing. When in reality, I found just the opposite to be true. A lot of very well-to-do, very successful men I found have been the most family-oriented, have been the most generous, and have had the most integrity when it comes to their relationships, personally and professionally. Now, I'm not saying that provider men can't have problematic behavior, but I feel as if the problems in their behavior that I've experienced is much different than the narrative that's going around. Let's start by debunking this myth that Black women don't like blue-collar laborers. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. The reality is, much of what makes us the most educated demographic is how many Black women have not just gotten a formal education through a university system, but many of us who have gotten certifications, diplomas, and licenses through trade school. That's part of what makes us the most educated demographic. So there are many Black women who are licensed cosmetologists, certified nurses aides, vocational nurses who understand the value of blue-collar labor because they are blue-collar themselves. They know exactly what plumbers, electricians, CDL truck drivers, EMTs, and paramedics, they know exactly what they make. Why? Because they're in those fields themselves. Where people are beginning to misconstrue blue-collar labor is that fact that they're putting under that blue-collar umbrella unskilled labor who oftentimes are underemployed, underpaid, don't have access to benefits. Those are the guys that Black women and most women don't really consider as being viable partners. And just like almost every male demographic in this country, there are more men who have college degrees than who are licensed, insured, and bonded skilled tradesmen. That's the case across all ethnic groups. So the first problematic behavior, I'm putting that in air quotes, that provider men demonstrate is the belief that they provide for more people than their families. Many times it's hard for these guys to set boundaries. My dad, I'll take as a primary example. His father integrated the labor union for electricians in New York in the 50s. And then therefore he thought it was his responsibility to bring along other Black men to be in the skilled trades. Although that is a very noble cause, many times he had difficulty establishing boundaries, establishing people who were worthy and ambitious candidates versus people who maybe just wanted to take advantage of his kindness. The same thing happened when it came to providing services. He wanted to provide his services to his community, to other Black homeowners, to other Black landlords. And many times it was at a loss for not just for his cost of labor, but for supply and materials. So a lot of times provider men sometimes maybe lack boundaries, and sometimes it can be taken advantage of. So that's one of the downsides of the provider men personality. Another problematic male behavior that I see with a lot of provider or high value men is the fact that they're workaholics. Many of them take on a lot of tasks. They bite off more than they can chew. They definitely will work really hard and not even enjoy the fruits of their labor, sometimes to the point where it risks their health, their physical and their mental health. Workaholic behavior actually is one of the few socially acceptable addictions that people can have because there's a reward for it. There's a monetary reward, and also there's a reward in quote unquote hustle culture. So one of the problematic behaviors that you have to be aware of is that sometimes a lot of high value quote unquote provider men are workaholics. One of the issues that I'm having right now with being married to a provider is the fact that they spoil their children. It's another boundaries issue. The fact that, especially self-made men, they love to give their kids opportunities that they didn't have. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But when those behaviors become an excess, it could really be very stressful and detrimental to both that parent and the children that they're raising. So that's just another behavior that you may need to watch out for. Another problem that I've also seen a lot with, especially in the medical field, with provider men is identity. Their work becomes their identity. Think about it. If you're a physician, they don't call you mister, they call you doctor, even when you're not at work. So a lot of times, a lot of provider high value men do have a lot of identity issues. Their career becomes a huge part of their identity. It dictates their social circle. It dictates where they live. It dictates how they spend their free time. I find this both in my workplace and at home, where a huge part of your identity is wrapped up in what you do and how you make money. And you really don't focus on nurturing who you are outside of what it is you do. So that's another problematic personality I find with provider men. None of these behaviors are problematic within themselves, but they are problematic in excess. Being a provider to your community, being a workaholic, spoiling your children, or having your identity wrapped up in your occupation. Those are much more common behaviors I notice in provider men rather than these nefarious, conniving type of behaviors that people tend to associate with men who are successful or who are wealthy. Those are some of the problems that I've found from my experience. What can you do about it? Reality is nothing, but just be a source of encouragement when they do establish those healthy boundaries and do begin to prioritize their physical and mental well-being. This is Mocha Mommy, and I'll see you in the next video.